The Chicago Bears have not won a playoff game since 2020, but no fan base has more hope for a team with 7 wins or less in 4 straight seasons than the Chicago Bears fan base. They made a big investment in new head coach Ben Johnson. They made a big investment in their offensive line, replacing both guards and their center in free agency. Between the new staff and the new offensive line, the hope is to establish a better environment for Caleb Williams to succeed. He was sacked 68 times last season. He lost a 108.5 EPA on those sacks, the second worst for any quarterback since at least 2000.
Ray, I mentioned in kind of the intro that this is a different type of team than we've been discussing that's had higher expectations. In fact, this is kind of the only team that's on this list that really has underperformed, underwhelmed, and done pretty poorly over the last several years. Yet they're one of the teams that you think must hit in the NFL draft. What is it about the Chicago Bears, maybe from a trajectory standpoint for the franchise with the new staff or with a young quarterback, that you feel they really need to make sure that they have a lot of success when they leave the 2025 NFL draft?
Well, I think, they're the perfect post-hype team. And I think when you look at what this roster is, that hype last year, I don't think it was unwarranted. And I mean, we remember where they were. We remember how they finished the season, right? But before that Hail Mary game that seemingly changed the course of both the Commanders and the Bears season, the Bears weren't, they were in a pretty good spot there. And that was with, some more issues as well. You mentioned the offensive line and what they've done already this offseason to bring that up. They also made the same type of investments along the defensive front as well, bringing in Grady Jarrett, bringing in Dayo Odeyingbo. Like they wanted to make these additions. My question with this team and my concern about this team, not as much on the offensive line front, although Rich can talk to that and kind of where he feels based on where they are. But I don't know if these additions they've made to the defensive front actually, solve their problems. Where Grady Jarrett is in his career, is he really kind of solving the problems you have up front? He has 4 sacks total over the last 2 seasons, 8.1% pressure rate. That's not the Grady Jarrett that we came to love earlier in his career with the Falcons. Is he still that guy? With Dayo, you're talking about he had a 10% pressure rate last year. That was the best of his career. That's promising that we see, that progression for him, but that's not a good rate for an edge rusher, right? And even if he hits, and even if he continues that growth, and he's better here with the Bears, they still need depth behind him, behind Sweat. And so I look at both those positions and I see those 2 additions, and I worry that they think, all right, well, we're good here. We don't really need to focus, because I think those are 2 areas they still need to build. We saw, Gordon get his extension. They have their 3 guys at corner, but we saw that kind of slump. Is that fixed with, the coordinator change? Does that, make everything kind of work there? We've got some, older players, some injury concerns at safety. So I look at this defense and I think, well, they've made additions. And when I look at this depth chart, I don't see anything that stands out as like a glaring need. But I also think it could be better. And I'm hopeful that they continue trying to build on that side of the ball while, making sure that, we get Caleb Williams where he needs to be. And if we're going to do that and, we build on defense and we get Caleb Williams better in his sophomore season, then we're really talking about a competitive team. But I still think they have those steps to take before they really reach what maybe we thought they could have been last year.
Yeah, I think it's good to start on that side of the ball, because everybody does want to focus, and we will also in the second on the offensive side of the ball, because it's sexier. We've got Caleb Williams. We need to protect him. We've got a new head coach in Ben Johnson. Everybody's a big Ben Johnson fan with what he was doing with the Detroit Lions, all the trick plays, creativity, running up the score at times. It was a lot of fun to watch. But this defense, one of the best ways to help your quarterback is to put him in a situation where you're leading in games late. And to do that, oftentimes you do need performance on that defensive side of the ball. You need to have both sides of the ball performing well. So if the defense is performing a little bit better, it will naturally take a little bit more pressure off of Caleb Williams, allow him to turn around and hand the football off more frequently rather than dropping back to pass in known passing situations, trailing in the second half of games, and really giving the defense a little bit of an edge on your offensive line in some of those spots. But Rich, let's pivot a little bit to the offensive side of the ball here for the Chicago Bears. They obviously revamped that offensive line, starting in the middle there with their 2 guards and their starting center. How much more do they need to do to help Caleb Williams, and where do you see them going in the NFL draft this year?
Yeah, they definitely shouldn't stop and say what we've done so far and just rest on that and say we fixed the offensive line. I mean, obviously you have Joe Thuney is going to be 33 this season. Jonah Jackson hasn't played a full season since 2021. So you still need more guys. Again, that's how we let off the show. Like you're going to lose guys in a 17 game season. You're not going to have all 5 offensive linemen be available. Week 1 and week 17. They've got Braxton Jones is slated to be an unrestricted free agent. He only played in 5 games last year. They did use a 3rd round pick on Kyron Amejiji. I just botched his last name, but he was really awful in his like small sample that he got to play as a rookie. So like they got to keep drafting bodies up front. They have those 2 picks at the top of the 2nd round. I know they're going to be tempted to take a running back with one of those picks, and they probably will. We're just have to gear up and prepare for that. But because of Ben Johnson, where he comes from, and the kind of the system they ran in Detroit, I think what's most exciting about the Bears is we're going to get to see some truths of Ben Johnson. We're going to find out how much was Ben Johnson, right? Can he calibrate the shortcomings that Caleb Williams had? He has different problems than what Jared Goff had. Jared Goff was a totally different quarterback than Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams took 17 sacks that were credited as his own fault last year, and that was a problem he had in college. Coming into the NFL. 18.7% of his pressures were self-induced. So even if you have an offensive line that's blocking, the tendencies that he likes to play with, we see a little with Shedeur Sanders coming in the NFL too, and it's probably why he's slipping a little bit. But he never had the upside per play like Caleb Williams had. But some of this also is Caleb Williams' fault, that why the offensive line performed to the degree it did last year too. So don't be shy to keep drafting offensive linemen, Bears, even though you've picked up a couple veterans this year.